Hello and welcome to yet another fully live Q&A episode of Hacking with Friends. My name is Kody. I am a security researcher at Varonis, and today we have our good friend and fellow hacker Alex here to answer your questions and talk a little bit about the Hope Conference. Alex, welcome back.
It's great to be here.
So Alex and I recently got to present in New York at the Hope Conference, and for Alex, this was his very first presentation. So Alex, what was it like? And yeah, what would you say to anybody who wants to do their own talk at a conference?
I would say it was pretty cool, but don't wait until the last minute to assemble your talk. That was an unfortunate mistake that I made, and I was scrambling to piece it together the last 2 days before my talk was scheduled, all the way up until like the last 5 minutes before I was supposed to get on stage. So it was quite a rush. I learned a lot from that. Fortunately, I won't be doing that again. It was pretty cool though. I got to share basically my experience over the past year developing the Nugget project with Kody. I talked about the timeline of developing this product, some key choices we made, and also mistakes along this development process. So it's really cool being able to share that with the community. It was also really cool to see how many people showed up and were interested in the story. Next time, I will not be writing my entire presentation mere days before I'm scheduled to talk, though. You also gave a talk too. How was that for you?
It was pretty good, and honestly, I'm honored to have been able to contribute to your talk, Alex.
Oh my gosh.
So Alex had his hobbies slide left dangerously unpopulated with serious information. I won't even say what he had written in there, but let's just say we absolutely couldn't present it. So he left it up to me in order to actually fill this in, and I did. So if you want to check it out on my Twitter, yeah, you can see that here there's several pictures of him holding hands with Bigfoot. And at a certain point, when he reads out that he likes rootin', tootin', and shootin' and reppin' the treasure state of Montana, I burst into super loud applause, expecting other people from Montana in the audience to join in. But unfortunately, I was the only one. So this was something I was very proud of. So Alex, thank you for letting me help you finish up your slides at the last moment. And also, if you're making a talk and you have your friend help you, just know that they could definitely punk you at the last moment if you don't have time to read your slides because you're running late.
Yeah, that's quite humiliating, but thank you. How was your talk? I got to attend that. That was pretty cool. $5 microcontrollers. No, $5 cyber weapons and how to use them.
Yes, so there's no video or photo evidence that my talk ever existed for some reason, but it did go really well. I went ahead and did a talk on, if you switch over to my screen, you can see it officially on the Hope website, $5 cyber weapons and how to use them. So this was really cool because there was also a talk on like $15 signals intelligence or like electronic warfare or something, but like most of the things that were discussed actually went like up to like $30 and more. So I felt like I kept my presentation like super honest at like $5 or less for every single thing. And if you're interested, I have put that talk online. You don't get to see my GIFs because I had to compress it a little bit, but here's my presentation. You can just go ahead and see everything that I talked about. So the talk was recorded and there was a lot of people there. So if you were one of the people that came to my talk, then thank you very much. And also it was the kind of at the last minute and I was like, you know what, I would love to add some art to this, but I don't actually, I don't do art myself. So I wasn't really sure how to do it. And I had an artist friend who was like, oh, I just use DALL-E for stuff now, like if I need it. So I went ahead and typed cyber weapons into DALL-E, and this is what I got out. This really weird, random kind of combination of like cybersecurity, hacking, and like this is like obviously some sort of like little tiny gun. So I love that I got to throw in some like AI generated art into my presentation. Towards the end, I had another slide where I also got to generate some more DALL-E art, I think. Oh, maybe it's not.
It was the very last slide I recall.
Oh, more, I have to click more pages because this is so big. Yeah, so here we go. Oh, there we go.
Oh, that's beautiful.
I typed in tiny computer bursting into flames, and this is what I got for destroying microcontrollers. So yeah, so this was a really awesome talk. Thank you to everybody who came. There were some great questions that were asked afterwards, and I hope that I can share this information with more people who are interested. And before you forget, Alex, we also got to run a workshop. So over on my screen again, you can see we had a pretty much full workshop. A couple of people ended up having to run as the workshop went on, but it was we were running out of nuggets. Basically, we were almost all the way out. And a lot of people purchased those nuggets in order to support our team. So if you're somebody who came to our workshop, especially if you bought a nugget, we provided a nugget for everybody so they could learn about human interface device attacks and taught people a little bit how to run Ducky script. And generally, everybody had a pretty good time. Everybody learned how to flash a microcontroller. It was a really great moment to see people take this microcontroller that was totally just blank, plug it into their computer, and learn how to actually flash a project onto it. So if you were at the Hope Conference, I just want to give a big shout out and thank you, because it was really cool to get to meet all these awesome hackers who came to both our talks and also to our workshop. So we'll, of course, be trying to do these workshops more often, and Alex hosts these in Los Angeles. So if you are watching this and you are in the SoCal area, then you should probably check out, where is it, Alex?
Null Space Labs. Not the location that Uber takes you to, because it took me 30 minutes across the city and I almost missed my workshop. But if you type Null Space Labs into Google Maps, check out that location.
Yeah, by the Burbank airport. So
yeah.
If you want to check out events like the ones that we're talking about in SoCal, check out Cyber Weapons Lab LA on Meetup, and you can attend one of those. And it also goes to support that local hackerspace, which is really cool. So. Yeah. Whew, that was a really long trip. I got to go to North Carolina before that for a Varonis event, and there was a heat wave on the East Coast, so we took a little bit of time off of streaming so we could just stay in the hotel and cool down because it was really, really bad. But now that we're back,
all sticky nowadays. It's kind of gross.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even back here in the city, yeah.
Yeah. So now that we're back, I also got a package. And just throwing it out there if anyone had any questions about it, I'm just starting to learn about the Raspberry Pi Pico. So last up on my screen, you can see I had something I had to go and address immediately after I got this package, and you can see him waiting here in the background. So I really didn't get to play with the Pi Pico W that much, but I managed to snag 4 of them on the first day they were available, and I was so excited to put CircuitPython on them. And it turns out that they're so new that the CircuitPython people haven't really got them yet. So there's actually no CircuitPython release for the Raspberry Pi Pico W that allows you to do Wi-Fi stuff yet, as of last night anyway. So I'm still looking forward to trying that. But if you have any questions about this, or if you want me to try a project that you've heard on it, I'm very excited to see what Dave, the guy who makes the PicoDucky, is going to do with this. And in general, yeah, it's going to be really cool. So if you have any questions about the Raspberry Pi Pico, then do chime in. But
where did you manage to get your hands on one? I was trying to find one the other day, and
originally I ordered it on Canikit, and Canikit has always had a really good record of like supplying us with like Raspberry Pi stuff and things like that. They're just over in Canada, so it was actually like pretty short to get to where I am. So it ended up getting there pretty quickly, and I get to play with them now and maybe break a couple in the pursuit of learning how to do some interesting Wi-Fi stuff. All right, so I also want to give a shout out to everybody who's live in the chat. This is, of course, live. We always get people who are asking whether or not it's live, and yes, it is. But if you have any questions about our presentations, my presentations talking about cyber weapons and what you can do for $5, and Alex's presentation on creating a business around an educational hacking platform, then please feel free to chime in the chat. So
I also want to give a shout out to.
Oh, go on.
I want to give a shout out to one of our friends that we actually met at the conference, Andrew from Make It Happen. If you want to check out this little write-up. So he actually got featured on Motherboard for his presentation that I got to attend, which was on, I don't know if my audio just cut out. I hope you guys can hear me. On different ways that various like physical security measures could be defeated. So this is a pretty cool talk. Getting to see him do the demo at the end was also pretty kick-ass. He like showed different ways that you could disarm various types of these security devices. But we also did like a little interview with him towards the end that might get featured on his channel or something like that. But it was pretty cool to get to see this live. And also quite an anomaly that nothing went wrong during this live presentation. I myself was kind of scared to do a live demo since I anticipated something might go awry.
Yeah, I thought he was very brave for doing that. And in my hand, I actually have, it's green. That's so funny.
Nice.
So so you can see he has this magical Chameleon board that he gave us, which adopts whatever's in the background. So it's the latest in digital camouflage. But aside from that, that's just kind of a side oh, look, see? And then I just turned it off. So yeah, anyways, the point of this board is to show a little bit about what shoplifting people have to deal with, I guess, in terms of technology. There's two little coils at the bottom that emulate the sorts of tags that will set off a typical like stores, I guess, like shoplifting detection and set off the alarms and make like a really loud ruckus. And there's also this continuous chain that if I break it, will start to go off, and I have to use a magnet in order to reset it, which I don't have.
Do you have your
and I don't
magnet
know
on
where it
hand?
is. Of course not.
Nice.
No,
You have to
so
dunk it
we
in
can turn
water.
off. Yeah.
Nice.
So anyway, this board was a really interesting proof of concept to show, well, for one, how you could like prank your friends perhaps by leaving this in, you know, something that they walk through a store in, and then end up continuously setting off the anti-theft detector, but also showing how a spider-like tag, which is the kind that if you break it will set off the alarm that just happened, actually functions. So you can just learn a little bit more about the kinds of technology that are involved in retail stores, which you might encounter every day. So this was super cool, and Andrew was also awesome. He facilitated a conversation with somebody at Adafruit we've been meaning to talk to for a really long time, and we got to just kind of learn a lot more about what Adafruit has been through growing and learning and stocking lots of different products. So the entire thing was absolutely amazing. We had a great time at the conference, and Andrew really like kind of went out of his way to make sure that we had a good time there. So I really appreciate that. It's good to get out and meet other cool hackers, and it's even better to, you know, learn and grow and meet more interesting people in the pursuit of doing that. So thank you very much to everybody that we met there. It was a really good time. All right, so let's go ahead and take a question. Alex, do you have any good ones queued up?
Yes, this one is one of the most recent questions on some of our Hack 5 videos. It says, why are you wearing your hoodie indoors?
Me?
That's a good question. No, me.
Oh.
It's on an old video of mine. It was just the first one that popped up.
I feel very targeted. I'm indoors right now wearing a hoodie, so I'm going to answer that question first. I'm wearing this hoodie because it cost me $100, but I gave that money to the Electronic Frontier Foundation, so I feel pretty good about it. And I'm in a basement, so it's cold. So, all right, your turn, Alex. Why are you wearing a hoodie indoors?
On the spot. My backstory used to be that I was keeping a family of fugitive field mice in my hair, and I had to protect their identities because they were on the run. But not sure. Someone also asks, have you guys used the Flipper Zero? I actually got to try one out at the conference. Some guy that bought a Nugget off us let me try out his Flipper Zero. I got to try out the bad USB payload, but I didn't get to try out, rather the bad USB feature, but I didn't get to try out any of the wireless stuff quite yet.
What kind of?
I know that ZAM.
What kind of scripting did it use, actually? I'm kind of curious about that.
I think it was Ducky script. I didn't get to look into any of it, but the guy deployed a Rickroll attack and also a Mimikatz payload on my computer, which didn't work because I'm running Linux.
Nice.
Yeah.
Always those little details, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, another question.
DDoS says, what's the shop that you mentioned? I believe they're referring to like our personal store, perhaps?
Don't know. Oh, the workshop?
Oh,
right, yeah.
Okay.
The workshops, yeah. So Alex is hosting some workshops in Los Angeles. I believe he has not scheduled the next one yet because we have Defcon coming up. So we are going to be at Defcon. But first to answer your question, you can go to Cyber Weapons Lab LA and you can see all the events that are going to be happening by Alex at Null Space Labs as they come up. If you subscribe to that meetup group, then you will be in line to get a ticket as soon as they come out. So and we're going to be at Defcon. So if you want to pick up a nugget, if you want to say hello, we will be there for a kind of limited amount of time. We're trying to be safe with the recent surge of COVID. And I don't know. So we're not going to be there like the entire time, but we will be around. So if we see you at Defcon, then you can say hello.
We should be dropping by the booths every so often. Might catch some of you guys.
Yeah, and we'll also have some people at the booth to answer questions, which is nice because now we have a group of people going with us, which will be really cool.
Someone asks, can I do the same thing with the Ducky Pico, just like a Ducky Rubbery? So I think some of those are swapped around, like the Rubber Ducky and the PicoDucky. So the PicoDucky was the project by Dave, right?
Yep.
You actually got to mess around with that a little bit. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, so the PicoDucky is a project that uses CircuitPython in order to use the Raspberry Pi Pico to do all sorts of interesting stuff. So there's only one issue with it, and that is, unlike the Nugget, which has a button and screen, that makes it really, really easy to navigate and like select things. It doesn't have anything like that. So it's much more like the original USB rubber ducky than it is like a multifunction tool that can do all this stuff. Now, what's interesting is with the Raspberry Pi Pico W, you might be able to have a web interface and then suddenly things get interesting again because the lack of buttons or the lack of a screen really don't become an issue then. So Dave is diligently working on updating this so that it can have like a web interface, which is really cool. So I'm really excited about that. And also he's found a way to, I believe, he was using like, well, okay, I don't totally remember what he was doing. It was like using the Nugget to act as like a remote to like run other payloads on a second one. But I'm gonna have to find it because it was really cool and it's been weeks and weeks and I have the whole conference in my brain, so I don't want to mess it up.
I remember you telling me about this like months ago. It's basically like a Wi-Fi trigger or something for like a second like Wi-Fi enabled keystroke thing.
Yeah, exactly. So that's, oh, I think he had ported it over to like the ESP32 and he was using it as a trigger for that. So basically the Nugget became the remote and then you would select the payload you wanted, plug in the ESP32S2 and then press the button and it would send it to the other device that was plugged in and run it, which is a pretty elegant way around like not needing the screen and buttons on the little small device that's just the microcontroller. So really cool work being done by Dave on, just like CircuitPython attack tools using the Raspberry Pi Pico. So interested to see what comes up with the Raspberry Pi Pico W.
Yeah, I also saw that he rolled a proof of concept that we actually based the first version of the Rubber Nugget off of, which was on the Feather version of the S2. That one had like a pretty primitive web interface that could do stuff like file modifications. You could deploy payloads over Wi-Fi, that kind of thing. But we actually used that as the basis for the current Rubber Nugget code when we were still prototyping in CircuitPython.
Yep.
But yeah, it'll be cool to see what he does with a Wi-Fi enabled version of the Pico.
Yeah, it is going to be really cool. So if you were asking about the shop that I bought the Raspberry Pi Picos from, then that was Canakit, Canakit, which is like because they're in Canada and they sell kits. Their name is pretty on the nose. Yeah, I like it because it's exactly what they are.
Nice.
All right. So yeah, in response to the flipper question, I want one so bad, but I just haven't. I keep going places for conferences, and it's not a really good time to like order. And also, they haven't been available. They've just been going out in waves of like pre-orders for a while. And if I want one now. So I haven't gotten one yet, but it is something that people keep comparing the thing that we've been working on to, even though ours is a lot more simple and trying not to be so many things all at the same time. So I guess it's kind of interesting to see like whether which strategy ends up like paying off, because we have focused on like making something very, very simple that only does one thing and does it well and gets like care and attention, whereas they have focused on creating this thing that does like everything, and then a bunch of other people are able to dive in and start working on making it better. So we were a little nervous that like nobody would dive in, and because of that we didn't really go that way, because it also involves having millions of dollars and a huge team. But I'm really happy that somebody had the resources to do that, because now it means I get to see, like what happened if we had decided to like, I don't know, like run like a big Kickstarter campaign and make a bunch of promises for all these things the Nugget could do in the future, and that the chip could probably support, but we don't actually know how to do yet because we don't have the resources. So yeah, I'm really interested to see the flipper because it promises so many things, and it kind of assumes that people are going to jump in and build on top of it. And that was something, as Alex and I as hardware developers were really nervous to do, because we didn't want to rely on other people, and we really ran into bottlenecks when it comes to making sure there's really good documentation and videos, and that the product's super useful, even to do one thing that's very simple, let alone for like 10 or 20 other things. Because content creation, it turns out, is really hard, even for people like us. So yeah, it was an interesting bet that they did, and I'm really interested to see the result of that, because they've gone through a lot to make it happen.
Yeah, overpromising kind of sucks. It's like, we also could have done the same thing, like pack all these features that people are asking for, like GPS for war driving and like that kind of thing. Then it's like, at the end of the day, if there's no documentation, then one piece of feedback that I've been getting is like, it'll just like sort of fall flat with like beginners. Sort of like, I saw that some people were like kind of disappointed by the lack of like beginner documentation for the flipper and that kind of thing. Even as cute and gamified and like simple as it is to like pick it up and understand the interface, it's like, once you have it, you don't really know what to do with it unless you really know what you're doing.
Yeah. If there's a very narrow part of the market that knows how to like pick something up without documentation that takes you beyond like a couple simple lessons or like useful projects. And that's something that I learned when I was making articles at Nullbyte, was like a lot of people start at absolute zero. And if they want to follow along on a project, you really need to guide them from start to finish. And you got to pay content creators, writers. You have to pay people like us to basically like think about the best way to explain that to a beginner and what they might not know, and then kind of do the entire presentation from that perspective. So that's why, like, as content creators, some of the promises I saw like Flipper making, I was just like, oh my God, like I'm so glad that I don't have to deliver on that, because we're we're over here struggling to make sure that this very well documented scripting language works super well, and that we can explain to people how to use it, and that our tactic for deploying it is the best way of doing that on our platform. And like they're over here doing that and like 10 other things that are equally impressive. So yeah, it's for sure a very bold move, and it does rely on making sure that people know how to use the device. Otherwise, they fit into this very small niche of people who are technical enough to take a microcontroller and just start working with it without very much like being given to them.
Yeah, that's where I feel like it's sometimes beneficial to add like not necessarily constraints, but like set boundaries when you're creating a device. Like for example, with the Nugget, it's like sort of kind of designed to do one thing well in order to make it easy for beginners in this space to like figure out what the hell to do with it. Otherwise, if it's just like a general thing, people get kind of lost.
We have an Alex question. So this one is, has anyone else used Alex's creep detection techniques to track pesky supervisors at work? So in Alex's presentation, he spent a longish amount of time talking about some of the other like presentations that you've done in the past. So one of them was, or some of the other like devices you created in the past. So one of them was actually the like ESP bug. And that might actually be more useful for tracking supervisors, if you want to explain what that was.
Yeah, so this was actually the first video / project that I showcased on Hack5, my pilot episode. So I essentially used an ESP01 module, which is the tiniest form factor of the 8266 Wi-Fi microcontroller. So I wanted to see if I could embed like a Wi-Fi microcontroller that could like sniff packets and do all sorts of naughty stuff inside of inconspicuous devices. So could I hide this inside of a keyboard or a mouse or even a wall charger and leave it as like an implant somewhere in order to sniff like Wi-Fi traffic? So the first proof of concept I did was I packed this tiny chip inside of a USB wall charger, and I created a custom web interface that allows it to promiscuously sniff Wi-Fi packets, capture it to the device every 30 seconds, and then upload it to a remote web server that I was in control of. So of course, there's lots of things that you can do with this, but the particular use case that I ended up using this for was detecting whether or not certain people were in proximity of this device. So essentially to see basically if certain cell phones or laptops or stuff like that were detected in proximity to the Wi-Fi microcontroller. And then if so, it would alert me via a trigger on the web interface whether or not this person was home or in the area or something like that. So a use case for this could be seeing if a certain person comes into the office, or you could also check remotely if certain people are home just based off the presence of some of their Wi-Fi devices. So if you guys also want to check that video out, you can find it on the Hack5 channel, or I can also drop a link in the chat.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite projects of yours, just because it is very spooky, because often Wi-Fi devices will use the same MAC address when they're connected to like a home or work Wi-Fi network. So as soon as they get there, then they have a tracking number that you can basically pre-program this little ESP chip to just sit there and listen for, and then just kind of send the signal strength information to a remote server that anybody can monitor from basically anywhere. So that's pretty crazy. The fact that you can be anywhere in the world and still monitor what's going on in like a home or an office or something like that, and which wireless devices are present. That's like something that a lot of people probably don't know could exist. And I think that it would be possible. I'm going to switch over to my
screen in a second. I also have the thing pulled up if we want to quickly look at that.
Yeah, I was going to say, like,
but continue, sorry.
Would it be possible to actually detect this using the hidden Wi-Fi devices technique you were sharing in your last Hack5 video?
Oh yeah, entirely. This thing doesn't do like MAC randomization or anything like that. Here you can see the ESP01 module that's implanted inside of a little USB wall charger in the background there. I wish I had a capture of the web interface, but I basically tried to create like a very primitive mock-up of like the Wi-Fi pineapple interface for reconnaissance. But yeah, this is basically just the module inside of a wall charger, and this thing is just capturing Wi-Fi packets every 30 seconds, then uploading them to a remote web server. That's the one constraint about this, is it can't do capture and upload at the same time unless you have two modules tied together. So this one has to basically do the uploads intermittently. But yeah, also you can use something like the Wireshark tracking technique I demonstrated on my last video to discover one of these devices.
Yeah, so if we switch over to my screen, you can see Alex's last video on how to track down hidden cameras with Wireshark, but it turns out this will actually also help you track down like rogue IoT devices in general. So like a hidden camera is a rogue IoT device. It's taking, you know, sneaky pictures, combining them into video, and then sending them over a data connection. Whereas Alex's tool is doing something similar. It is sitting there, it is using the wireless sensor to figure out who is present and then sending the information over Wi-Fi to a web server. So while the sensing is passive, it needs to connect to a Wi-Fi network in order to send that information out and be able to get it to the attacker who's like monitoring the space. So this, as you mentioned, is designed to be hidden inside of something that should not have Wi-Fi. So if you were suspicious that somebody was monitoring you and you use the techniques in this video, which by the way has 29,000 views, so congratulations, that's actually really great. Yeah, if you were to use the techniques in this video and walk around and start looking for the camera, you too could be successful just like Alex was in finding this camera literally inside of his toilet. I'm not sure if that's the best place for this, but I would say anything that has power, so a lamp, like a USB charger, or like a power like strip or something like that, all those things, oh, that's just you. All of those things would be places to maybe look if you were suspicious of one of these ESP bugs that Alex designed a really long time ago being used to track people. Would the ESP bug port over to the Nugget?
The SDK is a little different. So the Nugget is ESP32 based. So there's probably some Wi-Fi commands and methods and stuff like that wouldn't work. For example, I know that promiscuous Wi-Fi sniffing looks a little bit different, but in theory, the web interface and all the other dependencies should work just fine. But yeah, I'll look at actually porting that. That seems like an interesting proof of concept.
Yeah, that's cool. All right, so let's go ahead and actually, do you have another question queued up?
No, I don't, but I can look into that.
Cool.
I also want to quickly showcase an interesting tool actually for Wireshark that I was thinking of demonstrating. So this one is in that video where I showed how you could track down hidden Wi-Fi cameras and perv cams and that kind of thing. There was a brief part where I showed how to track down particular manufacturers of certain cameras like Axis, Communications, Sony, Panasonic, that kind of thing. And then also common vendors like Espressif that usually manufacture IoT chips that are found in like cheaper cameras. So for a particular part, I showed how to construct a Wireshark filter that looks for these types of devices, but it's kind of annoying to have to go through like a lookup table, look up the whole entire like OUI range for MAC addresses, and then paste that into Wireshark as a filter and construct all that from scratch. So I was thinking of constructing a Python tool that is able to automatically do that by using the Wireshark OUI lookup database or another one that's comparable. But I actually found a existing Python tool that I'm going to possibly be demonstrating in an upcoming video. This does all of that for you. It basically searches through the Wireshark database. It dumps it out into plain text, and then I'm working on the part that constructs it into a Wireshark filter. So you can just directly import it into Wireshark and hunt down some of these devices. So I found this super cool and also easy to work with. But yeah, that's about it.
All right, so we have one question that I know, unfortunately, that we probably can't answer, but I'm still going to read it because often we have people in the chat who can. I'm very entry level on Linux. I was thinking of taking the CompTIA Linux Plus before either Pentest Plus or EJPT, which I have never heard of. Which would you prefer to go? Do I need Linux Plus? Thoughts? So I don't have any certs, so I don't know, and I know Alex doesn't either. So unfortunately, I'm not totally sure about that one, but hopefully somebody in the chat can help you out. But we are live, so there's that.
Yep.
All right, Alex, got another question from Cool.
I also just lost my message stream, so I'm going to have to read off one of our pre-saved ones. Someone asks, on my video, promiscuous Wi-Fi scanning with the ESP8266, very topical. Can it capture handshakes? So unfortunately, not on the ESP8266. There's a limitation where it basically truncates the packets and you can only see the headers. So you can identify what types of packets are being exchanged. Like you can see probe requests or associations or that kind of thing. But at a certain point, there's parts of the data that just get chopped off due to whatever limitations with the SDK. For the ESP32, however, it's apparently possible. We've seen proof of concepts that can do full handshake capture. I haven't tried that out myself personally, but it should be possible in theory.
Yeah, so yeah, that's a very good description. The ESP32 is able to capture theoretically like full packet. So while it seems to be possible to, for example, like connect it directly to Wireshark using some really cool libraries that are out there, I have yet to be able to capture a handshake successfully. So I'm not really sure why that is. I've only tried about 3 times, but I have dedicated a decent amount of time to it. So yeah, very odd that I haven't been able to do that, even though it does seem to be something that should be possible based on what we know about the chip. So still trying to figure out why exactly that's not working.
Yeah. Damn, I still can't see the stream chat.
Yeah. One thing also to mention is, or one thing to just kind of think of is the ESP8266 is not able to capture anything other than metadata. So if you were trying to capture anything like, you know, the signal strength of a particular MAC address or something really, really basic, then it's perfect for that sort of thing. And it's very lightweight and it's able to process that relatively quickly. As soon as you start getting into the content of packets instead of the metadata associated with them, then suddenly it gets a lot harder to work with it, and it is not as much of like an ideal chip to work with. So just keep that in mind. It's a great Wi-Fi chip. It's wonderful for all sorts of like signals intelligence stuff and like presence detection stuff, but it is not good for any sort of analysis of the contents of packets like handshakes or anything like that. So kind of sad.
Yeah. That being said, some of the attacks that you can do. Oh, can you even hear me? I'm black on the.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that being said, some of the things that people are looking to do with like handshake capture, like being able to hack Wi-Fi and that kind of thing. I know that you were briefly looking into a proof of concept that could do like Wi-Fi phishing or that kind of thing. Were you able to get that working on the ESP8266?
Wi-Fi phishing
I think the technique you did was like deauthentication and then got them to connect to like a fake portal or something like that.
Yeah, so and by the way, I see your question about programming or learning how to code JAWS, and we will answer it next. So that's how you ask a question. But yeah, so in order to do Wi-Fi phishing on the ESP8266, there's a program created by Spacehoon called the V3 deauthor. So this is a command line only version of the deauthor that frees up the Wi-Fi interface. And instead of using the beginner friendly Wi-Fi interface that the version 2 has that allows you to connect on your phone or on your computer and get this really nice interface in order to work with the chip, it instead allows you to create a phishing page in place of that. So what happens is you would do a scan, identify a device on a Wi-Fi network, kick it off of that Wi-Fi network, and then create an open network that has the same name as the network they were just kicked off of, but no security. When they connect, it would pretend to be that device's router that was rebooting or had a security thing that needed the password in order to proceed. And then it would also go ahead and try to check the password that was supplied to make sure that it was correct before releasing the hold on the victim's Wi-Fi network. Now, of course, if they had like a 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi network as well, then the device could just migrate over to that and this attack would fail. So do keep that in mind that the Wi-Fi phishing on the ESP8266 does have limitations, and lots of really common routers nowadays will have 5 gigahertz, which will make this attack less effective.
Hey, hopefully with that new, God, their naming system sucks, but the ESP, I think like 32C5 or something that has 5 gigahertz, maybe that's possible. That'd be pretty cool. That's always been one limitation to doing these attacks on microcontrollers, but there's a lot of prospect there.
Yeah, so that's true. There is a new microcontroller coming out that supports 5 gigahertz, but it probably won't do Wi-Fi hacking, at least for a while.
Yeah.
All right, so Alex, how/what did you guys use to learn how to code?
Oh, shoot. Yeah, so I learned how to code in a language called BASIC. I'm pretty sure it's a backronym for something, but I'm forgetting what that is now. So back in middle school, we were issued these huge graphing calculators. And if there was anything I wanted to be doing less than math, no, if there's anything I wanted to be doing in math class, it probably wasn't math. So I was trying to teach myself how to like port games over to the calculator because I knew that was possible. And one day I discovered that there's actually a built-in scripting language called BASIC. So I eventually taught myself how to code like basic bitmap games and that kind of thing. Like really basic like Space Invader type like shooter games on the graphing calculator. And eventually I started teaching myself from there how to use the, oh God, what was it? After learning BASIC, which is just like an interpreted language, I eventually learned how to use like Lua or something in order to code like more advanced demonstrations. And then eventually I got tired of coding on graphing calculators, so I moved on to computers and I taught myself Python. But yeah, that's just about the gist of it. How about you?
So for me, I was already doing null byte videos and stuff like that, but I realized I wanted to go back to school in order to learn more about programming. So I went back to Pasadena City College and I started learning. But the teacher that I had was a little bit confused between the programming languages and was using a bunch of like strange like sports analogies. And it really wasn't like helping me learn very well. So I got really involved in student government. I made sure to get other students who felt the same around with me, and we got better access to education through holding events, holding hackathons, holding CTFs. And after that, I got into electronics because I ended up meeting some students who were more involved in electrical engineering. So I crossed over from computer science into electrical engineering and learned more about programming for embedded devices. And that was, for me, a lot more exciting, a lot more interesting because it was physical and I got to actually play with hardware that responds when you program it. So getting to make my own prototypes, getting to make my own proof of concepts was really cool and exciting. And that's kind of what I think managed to get me through having some pretty mediocre teachers in the early days of learning how to do programming when they would confuse like C++ and Java and like other languages when they were trying to do demonstrations. So yeah, we got a pretty confusing initial like 4 months or so of education, but after that I managed to find some really excellent teachers and learn a lot from them there.
Nice. I can finally see the chat. Cyberpanda asks, will you switch to Golang or Carbon, and what's your opinion especially about the Carbon language? Have you gotten to see that at all?
No, I haven't.
There's quite some controversy. It's supposed to be like a successor to C++, but some people are seeming to hate it. I don't like that it's like breaking the like syntax convention of C++. I actually haven't gotten to try it out yet, but I do think most successors to like languages that are already out there just completely fail to like actually provide anything new. They're usually just like renaming existing like conventions, and they don't really bring anything new to the table. Carbon, I haven't really gotten to check it out yet, but from the feedback I've seen on like Twitter and like that kind of thing, it seems like most people seem to agree with that sentiment.
Yeah, I saw I saw virus written in Go earlier today, so that has something going for it. Apparently, it's
yeah.
easy to use.
Yeah, we're seeing like a lot of new like malware and that kind of thing being constructed in Go just because of how easy it is to port over to different devices. I personally haven't tried it out yet, but it's something that I'm looking into.
Cool. All right, got another question?
Let me take a look.
Another question we had was, will you guys be obligated to stop by the vendor village at Defcon at given intervals, or if sales are slow, will you have to wear the T-shirts? Well, they have cool shirts, but I'm curious about obligations. Yeah, so that's an interesting question. So our team is totally independent. Redia is our own little production entity, and the people that we include in that are beholden to no one. However, we are part of the Hack5 family also, so we like to hang out with them. And I don't know, depends on if the shirts are cool, you know? Sometimes I also don't want to be identified by like 500 people in a relatively small room. Just, to keep things, you got to stay ahead of, never let them know your next move. So maybe we'll wear the shirts, maybe not. But we are planning to be at the booth just because a lot of people who have supported us throughout the year by picking up a nugget are going to be there. We want to say thank you and also answer questions and stuff like that. So you can expect to see us at the booth, but we're not really obligated. They'll have people there selling whether we're there or not. So it's not really like, like it's a fire that we need to go and like put out that that sales are a little bit slow. But we do want to go and connect with people, and we will be stopping by. So if you want to come and say hello at the vendor booth, you can expect to see us, especially during peak hours, which are, Alex, do you remember when?
Oh God, no.
Me neither. Okay.
Friday, Saturday, sometime. Who knows?
Like, yeah, it's like 10 to 12. You can assume.
And I will be there periodically, sometime between Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Yeah.
See you there.
Cool. All right, got a question.
James says, Python is a great choice to start. Mosh has some good videos on that. There are lots of other ones too. If you are able to pay, I really like 100 days of code, but the free courses are great. Yeah, Python is definitely a good place to begin. I'm pretty sure most people get started there. It's pretty much a ubiquitous language nowadays. There's lots of libraries out there for basically anything you want to get started with. Personally, I started learning Python using W3 Schools, I think. I'm sure there's better resources out there nowadays, but yeah, Python's pretty chill.
We got a Varonis question. How does Varonis handle distributed denial of service extortion attacks against clients or ourselves? A weird question, but just wondering. No real reason why. Well, okay, well, that's slightly suspicious the way you phrase it like that. Part of what's cool about Varonis is they have a bunch of machine learning stuff that specifically looks for signatures that are associated with known attacks. And because they're obsessed with like going through incident response and like finding all these different profiles of attacks and then adding it to this machine learning thing, a lot of different attacks are automatically detected just because of these profiles and because the behavior matches other types of operations. So a lot of the time, in order to persist, certain types of access are needed or certain types of activities are needed to happen in order to have an infection that then successfully gets like a C2 server and then starts a more persistent thing, or an attack against like a particular domain or whatever. I think Varonis also doesn't really do like distributed denial of service protection. Like that's more of like a Cloudflare thing. So Varonis is much more focused on what if that caused like a breach or something, or if there was something internal that was doing a distributed denial of service attack. So for example, like if a client was hit by something that was then attacking somebody else, then Varonis would be really excellent at being like, oh, this is part of a botnet now. Like this is definitely behaving in a way that we've seen before is malicious, and we can detect that because this person has never done these things before, and all of a sudden their computer is doing things that, while allowed, are not at all sensical, you know? So yeah, I would say like if someone gets infected and then their computer starts operating as a botnet, Varonis would be very, very good at detecting that. But if like, you know, someone's organization was getting hit with distributed denial of service, that's not exactly what we do.
From what I understand, it seems that they're more of a, they take like preemptive or like prohibitive action against like that stuff happening more than like the response, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like preventing like people from breaking in by using like machine learning to profile naughty actions.
Yeah, or even like automated attacks that manage to like breach someone's account. Like it should theoretically be able to like immediately be able to detect behavior on a user's account that's never happened before and is like super close to other malicious things that have been detected in the past, and then be able to stop that because like it makes no sense for the user to do that in the scope of their job. So that's like primarily like what Varonis is really good for. Probably not the best for distributed denial of service attacks, but hey, maybe we've got some product that I haven't been briefed on yet that does that. But yeah, more about like being able to catch insider threats or like being able to stop attacks before they like actually become like really bad.
Seems like my capture card overheated. Damn it.
Well, that's okay. We are kind of coming up on our time anyway. Alex is now using, whoa, Alex is now deep fried.
Yeah.
Turn off the filter, bro. Okay. Yeah, so we're also getting Alex a new capture card, which is coming from Amazon today. So this should be his last stream using an old capture card that we used to use on the Nullbyte channel that we used to have bags of ice that would completely melt from how hot this thing would get. And Alex, did you put the frozen peas on it?
I forgot to
put my cold water bottle on top of it as a heat sink.
So no. Ridiculous. It has to be frozen peas. You need to read the manual we sent you. Yeah. Yeah, so that's okay. We'll probably end up wrapping this up a little bit early just so that Alex doesn't start a fire with his capture card. But thank you to everybody who, again, went to our talks at the Hope Conference, ended up going to our workshop at the Hope Conference, and of course everybody who's in the chat today asking excellent questions. And yeah, just hanging out with us and doing some hacking stuff.
I hope you guys can hear me, but thank you for having me on the show.
You're welcome. All right, so let's go ahead and wrap up for today. If your question wasn't answered, you can always leave it on the YouTube channel because it's easy for us to find the comments there than it is like if you just leave it in the chat right here. So just go ahead and go onto Security Forward, that's Security FWD, leave your comment, and we will answer it next week, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Catch you later.